when is the best time to spread lime? Probably today. When was the better time to spread it? Probably yesterday. Every load of lime that you buy, Pascal O'Donoghue is going to give you another load of lime free. So the Minister for Finance, with the help of God, will be the biggest purchaser of lime this year in the country.
14th of September 2025 has seen the introduction of a number of changes around fertiliser management. One is that unprotected urea, that is urea that has not been coated with a urease inhibitor in solid form, will no longer be permitted to be spread on land. And the second relates to soil sampling. Any reports of soil sample analysis that are issued after the 14th of September 2025 must state the corresponding georeference or land parcel identification system, that's the LPIS number that you will see on your BIS maps, represented by the soil sample. And if you fail to do so, these soil samples will be defaulted to a P index 4, which is obviously going to compromise people's potential to access P fertilisation. However, just because the 14th of September has passed doesn't mean we park the topic of soil nutrient management. So today I'm joined by Seamus Kearney, Teagasc Tirlán Joint Programme Co-ordinator, to discuss soil fertility from a pH and K point of view, which can still be applied. But I started by asking Seamus to go back a few years to give us an idea of where we have come from.
Farmers are struggling with fertiliser allowances. We're well aware, especially dairy farmers at the minute. And like if we go back to the nitrates back in 2014, like we were looking at allowances of at a cow to the acre. So that's organic nitrogen 170 to 210 band. We were allowed up to 306 kilos of nitrogen per hectare. And there has been a cut in 2018, a cut in 22, and a cut in 2025. So 3 cuts since. So we're actually now back to 241 kilos of nitrogen per hectare on that same bit of ground. So we're back 21% on the allowances for nitrogen. So we're now back maximum of 193 units per acre. So huge drop on the allowances. Hence why a lot of farmers now, Stuart, are struggling with what chemical nitrogen allowances they're allowed at this stage.
There's no doubting that like nitrogen can help us get over a few limitations in terms of soil fertility. So that 306 kilos that you were talking about 10 years ago probably covered over some of the cracks that are on farms, did it?
Very much so. No, and I suppose, look, a lot comes back to the soil fertility, Stuart. And look, farmers would ask us a lot of the time, look, can I manage within my limits? And normally it's a qualified answer. You can, but you really need the lime, the P and the K to be running at 100% to get away with the allowances that were now allowed at about a cow to the acre. And in fairness, Stuart, the P and K is improving in the last few years, but generally on dairy farms nationally, it's kind of a rule of 60, 60, 60, where 60% of land is fairly good on lime, so 40% is lacking. 60% of the dairy land is good on P, 40% is lacking, and 60% is fairly good on K, again, 40% is lacking. But when you put all those 3 together, Stuart, only a quarter of the soils on dairy farms are optimum for lime, P and K. So 3/4 of the soils are lacking in either lime, P or K. But in general, about 40% of all soils on dairy farms are lacking on lime, they're lacking on P, and they're lacking on K then as well. So having those right will help release more background nitrogen and phosphorus and help us maybe to live a little bit easier within the allowances of chemical nitrogen we're allowed.
Okay, and Seamus, what can we expect in terms of the release of nitrogen as a result of having the lime status right?
Yeah, like getting soils up, Stuart, where they're very deficient. We're talking below 6, heading down towards 5.5 pH, getting them back up to 6.2 pH. We can get releasing up to 70 kilos of nitrogen per hectare per year. That's actually as much, or if not more than, the reduction in the chemical nitrogen we're allowed over the last 10 years. So a huge release of background nitrogen. So you're getting free nitrogen out of the soil by getting the lime out there. And we're also getting, by getting the lime out there, a release of background phosphorus as well out of the soil as well, Stuart. And look, I suppose lime, at times we can get too technical, Stuart, but look, lime is magic. And like by getting it out there, you're getting free nitrogen and phosphorus out of the soil. And literally, for every euro you spend on lime, you're getting a €7 return on a dairy farm. Now, if I told you I could get you a return on investment of €700 in 12 months, the first question you'd ask me is, what are you selling me? Huge return on investment on farms. And I suppose it's very applicable at the minute, Stuart, because looking at the figures now for this year, dairy farmers are looking at about 400 to 500 euro extra output per cow this year between milk being up slightly and milk sales are up about 8 cents a litre as well. So we're going to have a lot more farmers that are not in companies heading into the high rate of tax. So from a lime point of view, it's a no-brainer. Literally, every load of lime that you buy, Pascal O'Donoghue is going to give you another load of lime free. So the Minister for Finance, with the help of God, will be the biggest purchaser of lime this year in the country. But there's a huge incentive there for farmers that if the high rate of tax, which is 40% plus USC plus PRSI, it's over 50%. So like if you're saving the tax of 50%, for every one load you buy, you get one free essentially. So a massive incentive from now to the back end of the year.
Can you explain, or have you an understanding? You're a little while longer in the advisory service than myself, but why have we slipped on that lime? Like, I mean, our parents before us will say it would have been way better to use lime. What's the challenge around the lime like?
And if we go back, Stuart, to the 1980s, our predecessors were very clever. And back in the 1980s, we were using about 2 million tonnes per year. We're struggling to hit 1 million at the minute. But back in the 1980s, we were spreading a load of lime for every 60 dairy cows. Okay, so a load of lime for every 60 dairy cows. And one of the big things back in the 1980s, Stuart, and one of our colleagues, Conor Mulligan, did a master's in this below Johnstone Castle. The two big things he found, Stuart, was now you don't have anyone coming into the yard versus the 1980s when half the intercounty hurlers and footballers in the country were in selling lime to farmers. And farmers aren't getting that reminder about the value of spreading lime. Now, it was a little experiment back in 2021, 22. Teagasc, we sent out texts to a lot of our clients just to remind them, I suppose, when fertilizer got dear, the value of it. And we actually, those 2 years, we actually hit the highest usage of lime in 40 years in 2021 and 22. So we went from less than 1 million tonnes to 1.3 million tonnes in 21 to 1.4 million in 22. But we've fallen away now against Stuart to less than 1 million tonnes of lime per year. So we really need to be associated with that. We need to be getting out a load of lime for every 60 dairy cows every year. So if you're milking 120 cows, Stuart, 2 loads of lime minimum every year. And it's the same on dry stock farms, huge return on investment as well. But I suppose it's the forgotten element, I suppose, Stuart, a lot of the time, but it's probably the easiest one to put out as you close up paddocks or certain times of the year. You ring the lads that supply the lime, they'll organise the guy to spread it for you. It's a matter of opening the gaps in and the job is done. I suppose, look, there's a saying going, Stuart, when is the best time to spread lime? Probably today. When was the better time to spread it? Probably yesterday. So it's about every day is an opportunity to spread lime, and it's just, I suppose, building into rotation. Lime isn't just about reseeding; it's about getting it out on all ground when you need to any time of year. But this year, huge opportunity to Stuart at the back end of the year. Cash flow not too bad, big tax saving there as well. And we said for every load you spread, you're getting one free from the taxman. Really, is long the short of it in 2020, 2025.
And I suppose the other thing, Seamus, is obviously it's paying forward as such. So, like, if things were to take a dip or whatever, you have the investment done in it and you get the response to the nitrogen better than next year or the year after or whatever that you are applying then.
Completely. And I suppose, look now, Stuart, look, where the lime, the P and the K are low on farms, you could be looking to get maybe a third of the response of the nitrogen you're putting out. Where getting the lime, the P and the K right, you could be getting 65 to 70% return for the nitrogen you're putting out. So it has that much of a huge knock-on effect. So it's getting better bang for your buck. And you're right, it's like shielding our money from this year, putting into lime, which will help you on the fertilizer side of the house then next year.
Okay, so Seamus, that's the lime side of it. I won't say that that's it done, but obviously people have to act on their soil samples and so forth. But just go on to the potash as well. So like the 15th of September today, fertilizer is closed, but it's not. We can still spread the potash.
And that's the good news, Stuart. Look, the 15th of September, the fertilizer's closed for anything with nitrogen or phosphorus in it. So we can spread away lime, no problem at all. And we can also spread away straight K compounds, the likes of muriate of potash, which is 50% K. And like we said earlier, Stuart, 40% of the soils and dairy farms are lacking in K. And it's probably the element is lacking most in a lot of the farms. And I suppose the muriated potash, the 50% K, Stuart, the way it's kind of formulated is you go with a bag of muriated potash per acre for 4 years, and that should help you lift a full index for P levels. So if an index 2, by going with a bag of muriated potash for 4 years, you should bring that soil up to index 3. But on the back of that, you're probably looking at growing about another 4 or 5% more grass by getting that K level right in the first place. Now, I know this year with the protected urea, a lot of people think the protected urea is 46% protected urea. You have the 46%, you have 38 plus sulfur, and you have a fabulous product there, 29, 0, 14K plus sulfur as well. And what we're finding down here, Stuart, a lot of farmers with very little P allowances, they like that product, especially in silage ground, where they're getting out their nitrogen, they're getting out K, like 3.5 bags of that 29, 0, 14 is the same as a bag of muriated potash, and they're getting out the sulfur on the silage ground then as well. But the muriated potash, great product this time of year. Look at your soil samples. What part of the farm is low on K? Give it a bag of muriated potash per acre. Probably in the September, October time. If we leave it go too late, it can actually maybe leach a little bit. So we don't want that happening. So September, October, good time to do it. You wouldn't be going too much now in the spring, Stuart, with your muriated potash. We don't want to be causing grass tetany with cows. So September, October, not a bad time at all to do it. A bag to the acre. And if you do that for 4 years, you're lifting your K by one full index then at that stage.
And I suppose, Seamus, that 29-0-14 is a kind of, you're getting the double whammy of applying your nitrogen and getting your maintenance levels of K out there anyway. Like, so that'll cover maintenance, but you might still end up having to go with the bag of muriate on some of that ground in order to get it up the indexes.
Absolutely. And I suppose, look, the most important thing is, look, we all have soil samples at the farm. So it's having a map to show your soil samples. Or look, on our own farm at home, something that we did was all the paddocks are marked for P and K. So any paddock you go into, there's two little, actually one of them is the red top of a 2 litre milk carton. The bottom, or sorry, that's the red one. And there's a little green on some of the paddocks then as well. It's actually the top of an orange or an apple juice from some of the international supermarkets. I won't mention them on your podcast here, Stuart. But
Thanks,
basically the way it works is the red cap is for index 1 and 2. The green cap is for index 3 and 4. So the top one on the stake is for P, the bottom is for K. So if we go into a paddock and we see red on the top, that means it's low for P. If it's green on the bottom, it's good for K. So that paddock will get 18,612 short to use up the P. Likewise, in our farm at home, we're contract heifer rearing. We're allowed legitimately bring in some pig slurry. Pig slurry is lower in K than cattle slurry. So the ones with the red at the bottom will get cattle slurry because that's higher in the K. The ones with the green at the bottom will get pig slurry. It'll all get some slurry, but it's about prioritizing the nutrients you have to the fields that need it. But it's having a simple little system. It's keep it simple. That's the big one. And I suppose from a K at the back end of the year, Stuart, or lime, have a look at your soil samples. Which part of the farm is low? A lot of cases, it could be the silage ground. Because if you look at a crop of first cut silage, it's taking 100 units of K off that crop. 2,000 gallons of slurry is putting about 60 units back. There's still a deficit of 40 there all the time. So unless you're going with some product with K, that's the type of ground that's going to be lacking in K a lot of the time. The grazing ground is good in K. The cows recycle the vast majority of it back out onto the grass again. So it's about getting the soil samples, identifying which fields are low, and getting your bag of muriated potash per acre onto those fields that are low to try and help lift it that index.
So that's a good example, Seamus, and I've seen you doing that there at some of the events that we've done in the past about the milk tops, we'll say, or the orange juice tops. Just about, it's bringing the soil samples to life, I think, is your point, isn't it?
The big point, short, is that we have a lot of data on a lot of farms, but unfortunately, the soil samples, historically, the derogation was done. It was a piece of paperwork, it was put away, it was thrown in the drawer, and normally the poor woman in the house got blamed if it ever went missing after. It's about getting those soil samples and get them out and put them onto the paddocks. So when you're going out, look, if you have a bit of 18,612 left in the spreader, but you have a tight P allowance, you need to target that, Stuart, at the fields that are low in P. So by having the paddocks marked, simple thing to do. Having the paddocks marked, at least when you're out and about in the tractor, you can see which fields need that product that you have in the back of the spinner then at that stage. But for this type of thing, Stuart, I suppose from the line point of view, have a look, sit down some night, have a look at the paddocks, and at least identify the ones that need a bit of lime. You're probably looking at going 1.5 tons, 2 tons per acre. And the muriate of potash, you're probably looking at going a bag of muriate of potash per acre on the ground that is index 1, index 2 type territory. You're probably leaving the index 3 and index 4 alone. That'll get about 29,014 or your 18,612s throughout next year. And again, we're back again, Stuart. Every pallet of muriate of potash you buy this year, Pascal O'Donoghue is paying for the second pallet for you. Okay, so again, where we're hitting the high rate of tax, use the tax system. Your listeners, Stuart, work too hard to make the money they make. You want to be holding on to as much of it in the farm gate as you can, but also investing in strategic investments that'll give you bang for your buck in the next year or two going forward.
You've spoken a lot there now in relation to the chemical side of things, but just very quickly, because obviously we have another 2 weeks of organic to apply as well. What's your advice around the slurry that people have available now? There shouldn't be, there won't be stored slurry there, but there'll be slurry being generated on the dairy farms in particular.
Yeah, and I suppose the big one, Stuart, is look, at the end of September is our deadline for the slurry, so that's the first thing. So get it out sooner rather than later. It's probably a case, Stuart, at this stage, with a couple of weeks left of maybe following the cows with it, with a couple of 1,000 gallons per acre. In a lot of cases, 1,000 gallons of cattle slurry can be the same as a bag of 0730. Plus about up to 9 units of nitrogen as well. So if we're going with 2,000 gallons, you're getting the equivalent of 2 bags of 0730 plus up to 20 units of nitrogen. If you can at all, try and target it at the fields that are lower. Again, especially in the P and the K, that you're trying to recycle some of it back to where that P and K came from in the first place. The soil water, we can go a bit longer with. And again, that's probably a job as you're following cows along then after. And I suppose you mentioned slurry there, Stuart. It's the one thing, if you are going with lime, you're probably better off going to slurry first. Leave it maybe a couple of weeks to go to lime after. Where you go with lime first and follow up shortly after with your slurry, you can lose up to 50% of your nitrogen from that slurry. So you're probably looking at slurry first, then followed by lime after.
Very good, Seamus. So any final tips, I suppose? I mentioned in the opening piece there about the change away from the unprotected urea that's come about as of today, effectively. Like you've had very positive experiences in the role that you were involved with there in Signpost in relation to protected urea, with a small bump in the road, I suppose, last year. I think we've had a very successful year with protected urea this year, so there should be no fear from people in relation to that change of product allowance.
No, and I suppose to follow on from that, Stuart, like we've looked at all the combinations. Look at our own farm at home, there's nothing on the 18612 protected urea, muriate of potash. Keep it simple. That's the first thing. And if you use your 18612 to get your P out on the fields you need to get it, you're getting a bit of K with it and nitrogen as well. You didn't go with your NBT protected ureas, whether it's your 46, your 38 with sulfur, your 29014, and then you top it up with muriate potash after. When we looked at it at using that combination at current fertilizer prices, there's over €20 a dairy cow of a saving over any other combination of fertilizer. So we're talking over ½ cent a litre. So as well as being the more environmentally friendly combination, up to 6 or 8% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions with that combination versus any other, it is also the better option for the farmer's pocket as well. And if you look at it, if you're saving €20 a cow, Stuart, on 100 cows, it's €2,000. It's giving it in to reinvest back into lime. And remember, for every load you buy, Pascal O'Donoghue is going to give you the second one then as well.
I think we'll leave it on that one. So Seamus, Pascal's going to look after the soil fertility of the country in 2025, so fair play to him.
Thank you very much, Stuart.
That's all from this week's episode of the Dairy Edge podcast, and my thanks to Seamus Kearney for joining me on this week's show. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast. You can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify, and for more information go to the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie, or send us an email at our dedicated Dairy Edge email address, dairyedge.podcast@teagasc.ie. I'm Stuart Childs, and join us next time for your Dairy Edge.